Mia hunched over the cold pavement, her small fingers brushing aside fallen leaves until she spotted it. A single white daisy, its petals still fresh despite the chill in the air. She felt a spark of hope when she saw it, as though the flower had grown just for her. Carefully, she lifted the daisy by its thin stem and held it like a treasure. The city park around her was nearly empty, with only a few joggers passing by and the distant hum of traffic blending with the rustle of trees. Mia smiled softly, pressing the flower to her cheek before tucking it into the pocket of her worn jacket. A short way ahead, an older man sat on a wooden bench, his broad shoulders trembling ever so slightly. Mia recognized sadness when she saw it. She had seen it every day as she watched people's faces while she begged for scraps near the market. But this man was different. He sat very still, as though the weight of his sorrow pinned him in place. His expensive suit looked out of place on the bench, and Mia wondered what could have brought someone so well dressed to this lonely corner of the park. She felt a gentle compassion well up inside her chest. Holding the daisy tightly, Mia took a deep breath and walked toward the bench. Her footsteps were soft on the mulch-covered path. The man's head was bowed, his hands clasping a crumpled handkerchief stained with tears. The wind blew through the park, carrying a few brown leaves across the path, and Mia pulled her thin coat tighter around her small frame. She felt the chill in her bones but ignored it, focused on the man's sadness. When she was close enough, she cleared her throat softly. "Sir," she said in a small voice. The man looked up, surprise flashing in his dark eyes. Mia held out. "The daisy, I found this. I thought maybe you could use a friend." For a moment, the park fell silent. Even the birds seemed to pause in their songs. The man's mouth dropped open slightly, and Mia watched as his features softened. He reached out a trembling hand and took the daisy, his fingertips brushing against hers. "Thank you," he said, voice thick with emotion. His words were barely more than a whisper, but to Mia, they sounded like the sweetest music. She gave a shy nod and stepped back, folding her small hands to keep warm. The man tucked the flower behind the lapel of his suit jacket, as though it were a badge of honor. Mia felt proud and surprised that such a small gift could mean so much to someone. They sat together in companionable silence for a few minutes. Mia watched the man study the daisy, turning it slowly in his hand. His eyes glistened when he looked up at her. She wondered what he was thinking. She had learned over the years that adults carried many troubles in their hearts, and often they wore masks of kindness to hide their pain. But this man had no mask. His sorrow was plain to see, and Mia admired his courage for letting his tears fall in public. After a while, the man stood and brushed imaginary dust from his pants. "Would you like to sit with me for a bit?" he asked gently. Mia blinked twice and then nodded. She climbed onto the bench, careful not to crowd him. She sat as far from him as the bench would allow while still sharing the seat. The man shifted, making room for her, and Mia felt warmth from his body heat. Her own jacket was thin, but she looked at the man's fine suit and wondered how it would feel to have something so warm. They sat quietly, watching people pass. Mother pushed a stroller down the path, her baby cooing happily. An elderly couple walked side by side, leaning on each other for support. Mia thought about her own family, which she had lost long ago. She pictured her mother's gentle smile and her father's deep laugh, memories as faint as the scent of fresh bread. She had nobody to share stories with anymore, and sitting on the bench felt like standing at the edge of a memory she could not reach. Suddenly, the man reached into his pocket and pulled out a photograph. Mia's curiosity flared. He unfolded the picture and held it out to her. It was an old photo of a man and a little girl standing by a garden, both smiling at the camera. The girl held a flower in her hand, much like the daisy Mia had given him today. Mia leaned closer, her breath catching. "Is that you?" she whispered. The man's eyes filled with tears again. He nodded, lip trembling. "That was many years ago," he said softly. "I lost something very precious. Sometimes I come here to remember." Mia felt her heart squeeze. She knew what it was like. To lose someone you loved, and to carry that loss like a heavy stone in your chest. She thought of all the times she had watched families in the park, wishing she could be with someone who would hold her hand and tell her everything was okay. She glanced at the man seated beside her and felt a sudden urge to offer him something. More than a flower, without thinking, she reached out and took his hand. Her small fingers curled around his large ones. The man looked down at their joined hands and let out a shaky breath. Mia squeezed gently. "You're not alone," she said, her voice sure and clear. He brought their clasped hands to his mouth and kissed the back of Mia's hand. She blushed and pulled back, feeling a warmth spread through her. They sat like that for a long time. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the grass. Mia and the man watched the light shift and change, painting the park in gold and orange. Mia felt something settle in her heart. She had known loneliness every day of her life, but today, sharing that lonely bench with a stranger felt different. It felt like the start of something new. As the twilight deepened, the man stood and brushed his suit again. "Thank you for the company," he said, voice choked with gratitude. Mia nodded and stood too. She put her hands behind her back and offered him a shy smile. "I can come back tomorrow," she said softly. The man looked surprised. "Like that," he replied, reached into his pocket and handed Mia a small coin. It was more money than she usually found in a day. Mia looked at the coin, then up at him. "I don't need it," she said quietly. "I just like being here. With you." The man hesitated, then tucked the coin into her hand. "For tomorrow," he said gently. Mia slipped it into her pocket and gave him one last smile before stepping away. She walked slowly toward the park exit, clutching her worn backpack and feeling the daisy tucked safely inside. Behind her, she heard the man's footsteps as he made his own way home. That night, Mia lay on the thin mattress in the shelter dormitory, staring at the yellowed ceiling. She pressed the coin in her hand and thought about the man on the bench. She thought about the photograph he had shown her. Something about the way he had looked at the picture made her heart pound. She closed her eyes and drifted into a light sleep, dreaming of daisies and warm benches. In a tall office building downtown, David Lang walked into his empty apartment and closed the door behind him. He took off his suit jacket and loosened his tie, but he could still feel the weight in his chest. He carried the daisy home and placed it in a small glass on the windowsill. He lay awake for hours, thinking of the little girl with kind eyes and hopeful smile. He wondered where she had come from and why he felt drawn to her in a way he could not explain. Deep inside, David felt a stirring of something he had not felt in a long time, something like hope. As he brushed his hand over the petals of the daisy, he whispered into the quiet room, "Thank you, Mia." And somewhere in the city, a homeless girl pressed her hands together in sleep, feeling safe for the first time in years. Mia woke up early the next morning, even before the sun had fully risen. She rubbed her sleepy eyes and sat up on the thin mattress at the shelter. Around her, other children were still sleeping, wrapped in donated blankets, their small bodies curled up for warmth. But Mia wasn't thinking about breakfast or clothes. She was thinking about the man on the bench, the one she had given the daisy to. She remembered his sad eyes, the way he had held her hand, and how he had tucked the flower into his jacket. Something inside her told her that it hadn't been just a simple meeting. It had felt different, like a spark in her heart. She didn't know why, but she wanted to see him again. She got dressed quickly, putting on her old jeans, her too big coat, and the same shoes with holes in the front. In her coat pocket, she kept the coin he had given her and the empty stem of the daisy, now dry and brittle. She ran her fingers over the stem carefully. Then, without waking anyone, she slipped out of the shelter and walked toward the park. At the same time, in a tall apartment downtown, David Lang stood in front of his mirror. His suit was perfect, his shoes were polished, and his tie was tight. But his heart felt heavy. He had meetings scheduled all day, and yet all he could think about was the little girl from the park. Her eyes so familiar, her kindness so pure. There had been something about her that reached a place in him he had long locked away. He reached over to the windowsill and picked up the small daisy she had given him. It had started to wilt, but it still held its shape. He smiled softly and carefully placed it back in a glass of water. Now, for some reason, he didn't want it to die. He grabbed his briefcase and headed to work, but instead of going straight to the office, He took a different turn toward the park. As the morning light warmed the city, Mia reached the park first. She sat on the same bench they had shared the day before. Her legs swung back and forth under the bench, and she clutched the coin in her hand. She didn't know if he would come, but she hoped. Minutes passed, and then suddenly, she saw him walking down the path. Her heart skipped a beat. He was here. David spotted her at once. She was waiting just like she said she would. He felt a strange warmth in his chest. He walked over, smiled gently, and said, "Good morning, Mia." She smiled wide. "Remembered my name." He sat beside her. "How could I forget?" For the next hour they sat and talked. They didn't talk about big things, just simple things: favorite colors, the birds in the trees, what she liked to do when she wasn't looking for food. David learned that Mia didn't go to school, didn't have parents, and had been living at shelters since she was very young. Mia didn't go into details. She mentioned her mother had passed away. She didn't know anything about her father. She said she had a locket with a photo inside of her and her mom, but the other half was missing. David's heart tightened at her words. A missing father, a lost locket. It sounded painfully familiar. David had once had a family too. Years ago, he had a wife named Clara and a baby daughter named Lily. He was always busy with work, but he loved them deeply. One rainy night, Clara had taken Lily to visit a friend. On the way back, their car slid off the road. Clara's body was found. But the baby Lily was never found. Her car seat was empty when rescue teams arrived. Everyone had assumed she was lost in the river. For years, David had blamed himself. He'd lost his whole world in one night. After that, David buried himself in work. He built a large company, earned money, and gained respect. But nothing ever filled the hole in his heart. Until Mia. David found himself wanting to know more. "Do you have any other family?" he asked gently. Mia shook her head. "Just my mom." She used to say, "My dad was brave and kind, but he went away before I was old enough to remember." David's breath caught in his throat. "Did she ever tell you his name?" Mia looked up, thoughtful. "I don't remember, I think she said. It once, but I was little. I have the locket. It's all I have from her." David's hands trembled slightly. "Do you carry it with you?" Mia nodded and pulled out a small, heart-shaped locket from inside her coat. It was scratched and faded, but still beautiful. She opened it to reveal a photo of a smiling woman, her mother, and a blurry baby beside her. The other side of the locket was empty. David's eyes filled with tears. He pulled something from his wallet. A photo, old and worn, of the same woman, Clara, holding a baby girl. It was the same photo, but with a clearer view of the baby. He'd kept it all these years. When Mia saw the photo, she gasped. "That's my mom. That's her." David's heart nearly stopped. He couldn't speak. His hands shook as he looked from the photo to Mia's face, her eyes, her nose, her soft curls. How could he have missed it before? "Mia," he whispered. I think I know who you are." Mia blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" David didn't want to scare her. He needed time to be sure. "I'll tell you soon, I promise. I want to make sure." Mia frowned a little but nodded. She trusted him, even though she didn't fully understand. They sat quietly again. She leaned against him slightly, and he put an arm around her gently, protectively. For the first time in years, he felt like a father. Meanwhile, at the nearby shelter, a volunteer named Anna was sorting clothes when she found a small envelope tucked inside Mia's donated bag. Inside was a folded paper birth certificate. Curious, Anna read the name, child's name, Mia Lang, father, David Lang. Anna froze. She had heard the name before. She remembered the CEO from the news, from magazine covers. She had seen the man in the park, as recently to sitting with Mia. She couldn't believe it. Anna placed the certificate in a safe place and decided to wait. If what she suspected was true, something truly incredible was happening. Back at the park, David finally asked, "Would you like to meet me here again tomorrow?" Mia smiled brightly. "Yes, please." He stood and looked down at her. "I'll bring something for you, something special." Mia nodded and watched him walk away. her heart full of something she hadn't felt in a long time, hope. As David walked back to his office, he held the locket picture tightly. His mind raced, his heart full. Could it be? Could the little girl who offered him a flower actually be the daughter he had lost? And in the park, Mia clutched her coin and stared at the photo he had shown her. Why did her chest feel so full when he smiled at her? Neither of them knew it yet, but fate was guiding them slowly toward the truth. Their lives had been broken by loss, but destiny was gently piecing them back together. The next morning, Mia woke up before anyone else in the shelter. The sky was still dark, but a soft glow was slowly spreading through the clouds. She slipped out of bed and quickly put on her coat, hiding the locket safely in her shirt. Her heart was beating faster than usual. She had a strange feeling like something big was about to happen. She didn't understand it fully, but she knew one thing for sure. She wanted to see the man from the park again as she walked through the quiet streets. The cool air brushed her cheeks, and the sound of early birds singing followed her steps. She remembered the way the man had looked at her yesterday, how his hand had gently held hers. He had shown her a photo of her mother, something that felt like magic. Nobody else had done anything like that for her before. Somehow she felt safe around him. She didn't know why, but sitting beside him made her feel like she wasn't just a homeless girl anymore. She felt like she mattered. She reached the park and looked around. The bench was empty, so she sat down and waited. She pulled her coat tighter and stared at the trees, watching as the sunlight slowly painted them gold. Her fingers played with the locket hanging from her neck, and she thought about her mother's voice, soft and loving, telling her bedtime stories long ago. A few minutes later, she heard footsteps. She turned her head quickly, and her face lit. Up, it was him. David Lang. He looked a little tired, but when he saw her, his whole expression changed. His face brightened with a warm smile as he walked toward her. "Good morning, Mia," he said gently. "Good morning," she replied, her voice full of happiness. He sat beside her and opened a small bag he was carrying. He said, inside were 2 warm muffins and a small carton of juice. Mia's eyes widened. It was a long time since someone had brought food just for her. "Thank you," she whispered. They ate together quietly. Between bites, David asked her about the books she liked, her favorite food, and what she dreamed of becoming when she grew up. Mia's answers were full of innocence and wonder. "I want to be a teacher," she said. "Like the ones I see at the school across the street. They smile a lot, and the kids look happy." David nodded. "You'd be a wonderful teacher. You're kind and smart." Mia looked down, trying to hide her blush. She wasn't used to compliments. After breakfast, they walked slowly around the park. The trees rustled in the wind and birds flew overhead. David noticed how Mia's eyes lit up when she talked about her mother. She described her soft hands, her gentle laugh, and how she always sang while brushing Mia's hair. As Mia spoke, David felt a lump in his throat. He could almost hear Clara's voice in her daughter's words. Then Mia said something that made David stop in his tracks. "My mom always told me," she said, "that my dad was someone special. She said he worked hard and loved me very much, but he had to go away. She never said why." David's heart ached. He looked down at her and swallowed hard. "Mia," he began, but then stopped. He didn't want to scare her with his feelings. He needed to be sure, completely sure. "I think your mom was a very wise woman," he said instead. "She raised a brave girl." Mia smiled at his kind words, but she could tell something was going on in his heart. She saw the sadness in his eyes, even behind the smile. They returned to the bench and sat again. Mia leaned her head on his shoulder without saying a word. David closed his eyes and let out a soft breath. For a moment, everything around them faded, the noise, the world, even the past, far away in a different part of the city. Anna, the shelter volunteer, stood in front of the city library with the birth certificate in her hand. She had spent the whole night thinking about it. The name on it was clear, David Lang, and she remembered how Mia had talked about the man in the park. Everything was pointing to one truth. Anna walked into the library and looked up information about David Lang. In seconds, she saw news articles and photos. She saw old stories about his wife's tragic accident and the loss of their daughter. She saw a photo of Clara, the same woman, in Mia's locket. She held her breath. It was true. Her hands shook as she picked up her phone. She knew she had to tell him, or at least give him a chance to see it for himself. Back in the park, David finally stood up. Mia, I have to go to work now. But can we meet again tomorrow? Yes. Please, she said, standing too. He bent down slightly and looked into her eyes. There's something very special I want to share with you soon. Mia nodded, trusting him. Later that afternoon, Anna waited near David's office building. When he stepped out for a short break, she approached him carefully. Mr. Lang? She asked politely. He turned, surprised. I'm Anna. I work at the shelter where Mia is staying. David's expression changed. Is she okay? She's fine, Anna said. But there's something you need to see, she handed him the envelope. Inside was the birth certificate. David slowly unfolded it. His eyes scanned the paper, and his hands began to tremble. His name, her mother, all there, clear as day. David felt his knees weaken. He grabbed the back of a bench and sat down. Anna waited quietly, giving him space. Mia is my daughter, he asked, his voice cracking. Anna nodded. Yes, I believe so. I think fate brought you two together for a reason. David couldn't speak for a long time. Emotions rushed over him, shock, joy, pain, and hope all at once. All those years, he had believed she was gone forever. But she was alive, and she had found him not knowing who he was, simply by offering. A flower on a hard day? He looked up at Anna. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you so much. That night, David sat alone in his apartment. Holding the birth certificate in one hand and the daisy from Mia in the other, he couldn't sleep. His mind was spinning. Everything made sense now, why he felt drawn to her, why her eyes felt familiar, why her voice reminded him of Clara. He picked up his phone and stared at her name. Mia, he whispered, you're mine, and I'm never letting you go again. Mia, meanwhile, lay on her bed at the shelter, staring at the ceiling with a gentle smile. She had no idea what was about to happen, but deep in her heart, she felt something changing. Something big. Didn't know that the man on the bench wasn't just a kind stranger. He was her father. The morning sun peeked through the clouds as Mia walked toward the park once again, her heart light and full of quiet excitement. She had barely slept the night before. Her thoughts kept circling around the kind man she had met, David. There was something about him that felt so special, like he was more than just a stranger. His smile made her feel safe. His voice made her feel seen. She didn't know why, but she felt connected to him in a way she couldn't explain. She clutched her coat tightly around her as she walked faster. The city was already waking up. Buses moved through the streets. People hurried to work. But Mia wasn't in a rush. She had one place to be, one person to see. She reached the bench and sat down, her feet swinging slightly. Her fingers gently touched the old locket around her neck, the one that held the faded photo of her mother and baby Mia far across town. David Lang stood in front of the mirror in his apartment, dressed in a simple sweater instead of his usual suit. Today wasn't for board meetings or office work. Today was for something far more important. In his hand, he held the birth certificate Anna had given him. His name was printed there beside Mia's. The truth was no longer just a feeling, it was real. He placed the paper gently in his pocket, along with the photo of Clara and the baby. His hands were shaking, not from fear, but from emotion. After 10 long years of heartbreak, he was about to tell his daughter the truth. As he walked out of the building, the wind brushed against his face. But this time, he didn't feel cold. He felt alive. He felt hopeful. He felt like a father again. When David reached the park, he saw Mia right away. She was sitting on the bench, her eyes searching the path as if she was hoping to see him appear out of thin air. When their eyes met, she jumped to her feet and waved. You came, she said, her face glowing. Of course I came, he replied with a warm smile. I promised, didn't I? They sat together side by side, just like the last few days. But this time, David was quiet. He seemed different. Mia noticed the way his hands were fidgeting in his lap. She tilted her head and asked, "Is something wrong?" David looked at her for a long time before answering, "Mia, there's something very important I need to tell you. It might sound strange, but I need you to trust me." Mia's smile faded slightly. She nodded slowly, her heart beginning to race. "Okay." David reached into his pocket and took out the birth certificate. He unfolded it carefully and handed it to her. "Please read this." Mia took the paper and looked at it. Her eyes moved slowly over the words. Then they stopped. Her name, her mother's name, and then her eyes locked onto the father's name, David Lang. She looked up at him, her mouth slightly open. This is you?" David nodded, his eyes full of emotion. "Yes, Mia. I'm your father." Mia stared at him, frozen. Her heart was beating so fast it felt like it might burst. "My mom told me you were gone. She said you had to leave." "I didn't leave by choice," David said softly. "There was an accident. Your mother, Clara. She didn't survive. They told me you were gone too. I spent years thinking I had lost both of you." Mia's eyes filled with tears. "So all this time, you were looking for me?" David's voice cracked, every single day. Mia reached into her shirt and pulled out the locket. She opened it and showed him the photo of her mother. "She gave this to me before I lost her. I never knew who was supposed to be on the other side." David pulled out his own photo, the same picture, only clearer. "It's this one," he said. "It was the last photo I took with your mother and you." Mia gasped. "It's the same." Tears spilled down her cheeks, but she didn't look away. She stared at him, trying to understand everything at once. Her whole life she had dreamed about her father, what he might look like, what he might say to her if he even loved her. And now, here he was. Not a dream, not a story, but real. David leaned forward, afraid to move too fast. "Mia, I know this is a lot, but I want you to know something. I never stopped loving you, even when I thought you were gone. I carried your photo in my wallet for 10 years, never gave up hope." Mia wiped her eyes and whispered, "I used to think I didn't belong anywhere, that nobody wanted me." David's face tightened with pain. "No, Mia, that's not true. You belong with me. You've always belonged with me." She looked at him, really looked at him. The eyes that once seemed kind now looked familiar. The way he smiled, the way he spoke. It all began to fit, like puzzle pieces coming together after years of confusion. Suddenly, without saying a word, Mia threw her arms around him. David froze for a second, then wrapped his arms around her tightly. For a moment, they just stayed there, holding each other as if time itself had paused. The pain, the years apart, the loneliness, it all melted in that hug. "I missed you," Mia whispered through tears. "I missed you more than words can say." David whispered back. People walking by paused and smiled at the sight of the girl. And the man hugging on the bench? Nobody knew their story, but everyone could feel the love in the air after a long while. They pulled apart, both still wiping tears from their faces. "Can I come home with you?" Mia asked softly. David smiled gently. "Yes, but only if you want to. There's no pressure." "I want to," Mia said. "Want to go where you go?" David nodded, standing up and offering her his hand. She took it, holding on tightly. As they walked through the park side by side, Mia felt like she was walking into a new world. A world where she wasn't alone anymore. A world where she had a home. That evening they stood in front of David's apartment. Mia looked up at the tall building, unsure. "Do I have to dress fancy in there?" she asked. David laughed and shook his head. "No, sweetheart. You just have to be yourself. That's all I want." Inside, everything felt warm and soft. The lights, the smell of fresh bread in the kitchen, the way the couch seemed to invite her to sit. David showed her around gently, telling her which room could be hers. She looked around in wonder at the books, the soft blankets, the framed pictures on the walls. There was one picture that caught her eye. It was of her mother, Clara, standing in a flower garden, smiling. Mia reached out and touched the frame. "I remember this dress," she said. David stood beside her. She loved that garden. She said flowers reminded her of hope. Mia turned to him. Maybe that's why I gave you the daisy that day. David nodded. Maybe your mother was watching over us. That night, Mia slept in a real bed under a warm blanket. David sat beside her, brushing her hair softly, just like Clara used to. Before turning off the light, he whispered, "Good night, my daughter." Mia smiled in the dark. "Good night, Dad." Outside, the stars glowed gently in the sky. In the middle of a big city, in a quiet apartment, a family was whole again. After that first night together, David and Mia began a new chapter in their lives. The days that followed were filled with small moments of discovery, healing, and the slow building of trust. Mia had never lived in a home before, only in shelters, on the streets, or with strangers. But now, everything was different. David made sure her room was cozy, with soft blankets and pictures of flowers on the walls. Mia smiled every morning when she saw the bright sunlight coming through her window. At first, Mia was shy and cautious. It was hard for her to believe that the man who had been so kind in the park was really her father. Sometimes she would look at him and wonder if he might disappear like so many others had before. But David was patient. He didn't rush her or force her to say things she wasn't ready to say. Instead, he listened carefully and gave her space to open up in her own time. One afternoon, they sat together on the couch, sipping hot chocolate. Mia was drawing pictures with crayons, a garden full of daisies and tulips, a place where she imagined she could run and play forever. David watched her, amazed by how much hope she still held inside, even after all she had been through. "You have a beautiful imagination, Mia," he said softly. "Your mother would be proud." Mia paused and looked up. "I wish she was here." David nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. "I do too, every day. But she left us a gift to each other, and together we will make new memories." As the weeks passed, Mia started school for the first time in years. David helped her with homework and attended parent-teacher meetings. Learning more about the world she was entering, Mia was nervous on her first day, but David held her hand and promised to be there when she came home. She made friends slowly. Some kids were curious about her, some were kind. Others didn't understand why she didn't have a mother or a father like they did. Mia learned to stand tall, knowing that she was loved deeply by the man who had found her again. At work, David changed too. He took time off from long meetings and business trips. He started spending evenings cooking dinner with Mia and telling her stories about when she was a baby. He wanted to be the father she deserved, the one who was always there, who listened, who loved without conditions. One day, David took Mia back to the park where they had first met. The bench where she had given him the daisy was still there, worn but steady. Together, they planted a small flower bed beside the bench. Mia chose daisies, her favorite, and other bright flowers. They worked side by side. David told her stories about her mother, how much she loved flowers, how she dreamed of a happy family. Mia smiled, feeling her heart fill with warmth. She realized that although her past had been hard, her future was full of light. The bench was no longer just a place of sadness or loneliness. It was a place of hope, love, and new beginnings. Neighbors stopped by to admire the flowers and the new family planting them. Some remembered the lonely man who used to sit on the bench. Now, they saw him laughing with a bright-eyed little girl, their hands covered in dirt, smiling like they belonged together. David and Mia grew closer every day. He taught her how to ride a bike, how to bake cookies, and how to believe in herself. Mia taught David how to be patient, how to find joy in the small things, and how to heal a broken heart. Sometimes they would sit quietly in the evening, watching the stars from the window. Mia would rest her head on David's shoulder, and he would hold her close, whispering, "You are my greatest treasure." Mia knew she was finally home. The homeless girl who had given a flower to a crying man on a bench had found her family again. And in that family, she found love that would never fade. Life wasn't perfect, and some days were still hard. Mia and David faced everything together, knowing that the flower they shared that day had blossomed into something beautiful and strong, a flower that reminded them both that, even in the darkest times, kindness and hope could grow in that. Sometimes the smallest gifts could change lives forever.